Before we move on to tip number 1, there's 2 categories you may be in. Number 1 is, what if you don't have an audience at this current time? And number 2, you've started to attract an audience's attention. So what that means is, number 1 means you don't have questions from the audience. And number 2 means you have questions that the audience have for you, and then you can answer them. Which leads me on to tip number 1 in terms of what type of content. So what type of content do you do if there's no audience around to ask you a question? Well, Carl is going to be introducing to you a handful of tools that we can use, and I'll introduce one now. The first tool we use is a tool called Answer the Public. AnswerThePublic.com looks at what topical things people are asking on Google, which gives you a list of topical things. For example, you could type in there yoga exercise, and it may come up with a question on what is the best yoga exercise to do in the morning. Immediately you have a topic and a space to talk into. So the first type of content type will be a topic and a space you talk into. Now, this gets more advanced when you have an audience and you can ask them, hey audience, literally you can ask them, hey audience, whatever your audience is called, depending on your business and what they like to refer to you as, is there anything you'd like me to answer? What would you like to know? And then they may ask you a question. I'm struggling with this type of yoga in the afternoon, or I can't do yoga in the afternoon because of work. What shall I do? Then now you have a topical space to talk into around that topic. So number 1 is talk into a topical space, whether you have an audience or whether you don't. There's no reason not to do that straight away. Now, number 2 is a live video in the moment. So if your business is a bit more dynamic than ours, a digital marketing company, we just sit behind the computer most of the time. If your business is a bit more dynamic than that, say for example you're in the property investing world, say for example you are in the yoga world, you have some more dynamic stuff to show in the moment. For example, property, put the live video on, take somebody around the tour of the house or the investment property you're dealing with. Yoga, put your phone on your tripod, press start, and then start to talk to your audience about yoga postures, yoga positions, breathing techniques, whatever is dependent on your business niche. So yes, I've chosen some specific topics, but think about this in the sense of your particular business. For example, in our community, people ask questions about us on digital marketing. And number 3 are tips and tricks videos. So remember, these are the top 3 things in terms of content types that you can start using immediately. And number 3 is tips and tricks. People love tips and tricks because they believe they're going to get X amount of tricks and hacks and tips for X amount of time that they invest in looking at your content. For example, 1, 2, 3 lists, top 10 lists. Here's some random examples, is 10 things I didn't know about digital marketing, or 10 things you didn't know about digital marketing. That's a piece of content. Then I would go through 10 different things. Another one is 5 life hacks for hanging up clothes. It can literally be anything. And those are the top 3 content types that we recommend you start straight away. There's absolutely loads, but this is to give you a head start and to give you a starting point, especially if you don't have an audience immediately. Now moving on to the next element, which is one of the biggest common questions we get, which is time. Should my video be short? Should it be long? Should it be medium? What is the time? Should it be lots of content, which Kyle is going to answer in the future, or is it quality? So on this topic, there are actually 2 trains of thought. Train of thought number 1 is it needs to be small, digestible, something like, if you look at YouTube sensation Casey Neistat, his are about 5, 7, 8 minutes long videos. Most of his videos are around that time. So some people believe they got to be short. If you are into the life hacks, into the quick tutorials, there's even stuff which is 2 to 3 minutes. So that's one train of thought. However, there's another train of thought which says If it's of good quality, if the message is strong, then the audience will listen to it regardless of the length. So let's take a video editing tutorial, Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere as a video tutorial or how-to guide on how to use the software. That may be typically 45 minutes to an hour long, and somebody will sit through that depending on what interest they have in that topic. Now you could go very long. If you look at the famous podcaster Tim Ferriss, hour and a half, 2 hour long, including our podcasts. So our podcasts, the Growth Tribes podcast and the How to Market Your Business podcast, are anything between 45 minutes to 2 hours. And the audience listen to that because we are of the thought of quality. But the biggest thing to remember is the data will tell. And then the second thing to remember is it depends on who your audience is. And it's a very important note if you want to write this down. It depends on who your audience is. For example, if you are hosting a yoga YouTube workshop or classes and you're putting that education out there, that's not going to be a 5 to 7 minute video. It's going to be half an hour plus. If you're interviewing somebody and you've been wanting to get hold of that interview for over a year, 12 to 18 months, that's not going to be a 20-minute show. You're really going to grab that opportunity, and your listeners will be also looking forward to that interview, so they're going to be spending the time. They'll be there for an hour. And then it depends on your audience. For example, cooking, it could be shorter. If you're putting on cooking demonstrations, nobody has half an hour to learn about one recipe. They've got dinner to cook, they've got lunch to cook. So if you can nail the recipe in 5 to 8 minutes, give them the story about it, tell them the recipe, show them the how-to, they'll be happy with that. So always think about who is my audience, what eyes are watching me, and then think about timing around that. So hopefully that makes sense. So now let's go on to the summary part of this video.